Welcome back to another episode of the Empower Grief Journey podcast. I'm your host, Chris Mamoni, and I'm an acceptance coach who helps people heal from grief, loss, and trauma to discover their self-acceptance and step into their personal power. This podcast is your dedicated space for growth, transformation, and healing. Each episode shares insightful and inspirational stories along with practical tools and actionable insights that can help guide you along your healing journey. Today, I have an amazing guest with us. Her name is Terrie Christine, and she is an internationally acclaimed intuitive energy healer with over 20 years of experience. She was featured on Bravo's The Real Housewives of Potomac, OWN's Love and Marriage, DC Good Morning America, Washington, and Fox affiliates in Las Vegas, Chicago, and Washington, DC. Terrie is a recognized voice in the self-empowerment space. She is also the author of The Secret Power of You, which has been endorsed by Don Miguel Ruiz, New York Times bestselling author of The Four Agreements. With her finely tuned intuitive abilities, she quickly identifies and clears the energy blocks rooted in fear, trauma, and limiting beliefs, often within seconds. Terrie guides clients from around the globe to clarity, peace, and lasting emotional freedom, helping them reclaim their power and heal at their deepest level. So, without further ado, guys, I want to introduce Terrie onto the podcast. Terrie, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Chris, for having me. Wow, somebody else reading that is like, whoa, listen to her.
Well, I,
I
I I love
appreciate it.
that you're very welcome. I love that you've been endorsed by Don Ruiz because I've read several of his books and they have personally changed my life.
The Four Agreements was one of the very few at the beginning that I read on my spiritual journey. And that story in itself is pretty interesting. Can I share it, just a little tidbit of it?
Absolutely.
So I was in a master class learning how to speak from stages, uh, media, working with media, podcast, TV, and write our book. And I was meditating during that time, and I was in a deep meditation, and I heard, your book will be similar to the Four Agreements. It threw me out of meditation. I said, oh my gosh, those are big shoes to fill. I don't know if I could do that. So fast forward a year later, the mastermind, we were meeting all over the country every 3 months. And this particular month was in LA. And so here our small group was, and the founder of the mastermind says, I have a surprise for you. And within seconds, literally, the door opened and I was face to face with Don Miguel Ruiz. And I'm like, what? And I had not shared what I had heard in my meditation. He sat right next to me. So Fab set the whole thing up. It was Fab Mancini. He set the whole thing up of him sitting next to me, talking to me. And I was just sharing him what I was starting to write. And over the course, I forward my book, and he's like, I want to endorse that for you. So it was so magical how that whole thing happened. And it was a year from when I heard that in my meditation.
That's absolutely incredible to have that intuitive ability to know that that was going to happen.
Some of the things that I pick up blow my mind, totally blow my mind. Like how I got on Love and Marriage DC, that was actually through a meditation as well. So when you connect so deeply, being an intuitive, number one, I trust and know that everything that I'm hearing, feeling, and seeing, that's my clairvoyance, clairaudience, and clairsentient. I trust it 100%. And I had been on Real Housewives of Potomac in 2018, and then fast forward post COVID, and I'm like, okay, it's time to be back on TV again. So I was doing a therapy, and I was in the middle of meditating during this therapy, and I do creative visualization while I'm in my meditation. So I can start with visualizing what I would like it to be. Since I've been on TV once, I'm like, well, I know what it looks like to be in front of 6 cameras. So during the meditation, at the beginning, I would visualize the cameras standing in front of me. I would visualize a contract. I'd sign it at the bottom, and this is you being on TV. And then for me, that visualization just takes over. And so then I just watch a movie, almost like lucid dreaming. I'm watching it unroll within 3 weeks, I had a client come to me, and at the time, I would always introduce myself, let me tell you what I do and how I do it and my history. I've been on Bravo. And the one woman said, well, so have I. And I'm like, oh, really? Tell me about it. And she said, I was on Real Housewives of Potomac. And I said, oh, so was I. And I didn't even know who she was at the time. Well, we became really good friends, and she had an opportunity. She wasn't on the show when she came to me. And then when she was presented another opportunity, we had been working together maybe 2 or 3 months, and she said, Terrie, you've helped me, you've helped my family. She said, I want to send your name to the producers. And I ended up on 5 episodes, and that's how it ended up being. But I visualized it as at first, and then she found me. So I became the magnet. That's actually, I'm a master manifester. So that's actually how you do it. So you have to believe it, you have to feel it, and then take guided action on it. So then I was visualizing it, feeling it, because again, it was I had already been on TV once, so I knew what it would look like. I knew how it felt. So it was easier to manifest it quicker. It took me a year to get on Real Housewives through my manifestations, but it took me, 3 weeks for her to find me. And then 3 months later, we were filming.
That's an absolutely incredible story, and it brings me to my questions I have for you, which is how did you discover these talents that you have right now? Because there's a lot of people will say like this is woo-woo or this is out there kind of thing, and in my own personal experience, I don't think it is just because of my journey of things. But I'm really looking forward to hearing more about how you discovered these gifts and what your story was behind that.
Yeah, so Chris, I was just like probably most of the listeners or some of the listeners out there, like I'm curious, but I had no idea about what this world looks like, the world I live in now. And well, let's stop. So when I was 8 years old, I was hit by a car, and I lacerated my liver, bruised my spleen, dislocated my left arm, and broke my jaw. And so I was in a coma for about a month at 8 years old. And then they had to wire my jaw shut. And, fast forward, going through a lot of things in that healing process. But I'm a stubborn little person, as I was. And I found that I was manifesting through, again, creative visualization. I was born into teenage parents. And so there weren't a lot of benefits when we were living. We ate a lot of pancakes. My clothes didn't fit most of the time. And I felt like I wanted more in life. I was tired of hearing the NO. So the more I heard NO as a child, I would turn that into KNOW. So then I kept saying to myself, how can I KNOW this? How can I get around this? Because I don't want to hear NO anymore. I don't want that. And I became like this, I wouldn't say angry, but I would say a fast forward thinker.
I love that.
Yes, and I found that I was manifesting quite a few things in my little life, and but still stubborn, where I was in my 20s working 2 jobs, 30s working 2 jobs, because again, when you have an environment that, there's a lot of lack, then you're programmed to live in the space of lack. So I had to deprogram myself, but because I was still living in my 20s and 30s, it got to the point where I'm like, I'm done with this. So fast forward to when I met my partner and we had children, and we were together for 14 years. But I was trained by both my mother and my grandmother to serve and service my mate. And so I became a fixer and an overgiver. And I kept giving and giving and giving and giving. And so when you get to the point where that is programmed in you, you get to half of that life and you're like, is this what this is? Like, where is the receiving part? And when you have somebody that gives so much, and the person who is receiving so much, they unintentionally take it for granted. And I say unintentionally because in his head, he's like, well, if she needs anything, she'll just tell me. And in my head, I'm going, I am struggling taking care of 2 children, him, the house, have a full-time job. And I don't understand. But he would always like, every oh, it's all good. Always read a newspaper and I'm on the floor cleaning up whatever. And so I got to the point in that last year that I'm like, I don't want to be a part of this physical body. And I had to figure out what, where, how, who in order to get to the space of happiness. But I wasn't getting it from him. The children, they were giving me, but there's a difference between receiving love from your children and receiving love from your mate. And when you're really wanting that unconditional mate, be there for you, pour into you as you're pouring into them, and you're not getting it, you start questioning, what are you doing wrong? You start blaming yourself, and then you start looking for the exit door without it being a physical door. It can get that bad, and it was for me, because I didn't want to leave him, but I wanted to leave the situation. So at the end of the 14th year, I found myself crying that last year every night, like hysterically crying every night. I'd finish dinner, put the kids to bed, and I would just go to bed. And then one night, I tell this story every single time. It's so tough to talk through it. But one night, my daughter comes in, my oldest. She might have been about 11 or 12. And she comes over and she's like, Mommy, I was laying on my side, crying like I'd always cried. And she says, please don't cry anymore, Mommy. And I'm like, oh my God. That was so gut-wrenching to think that your own daughter is trying to lift you up out of despair. And I thought, this is it. I can't do this anymore. And so I woke up at 3 a.m. and I climbed into the bathroom and I laid on the floor and I said, God, with every ounce of what you have, just take me because I'm ready. And I was just moving into that space of saying, take me, because I knew I couldn't do it by myself. But I knew that that connection of trusting that I could have my soul just go, whoop, you're done. And so within that space of just the connected source of saying, I'm done, I just started feeling expanded slowly, as if it was like a balloon, right? You're expanding and expanding. My eyes were closed, but it was a form of lucid dreaming. So I was completely wide awake. And the more I blinked my eyes with my eyes closed, it started forming as if I was in the center of the universe. Stars were so close, I could touch them. I could feel this dampness around me. I could taste it. I could feel this sense of freedom. And then I'm like, I'm done. I'm complete. I was fully at ease, fully at peace, knowing everything is done. Like I was like in heaven, but I was in the center of the universe. And then all of a sudden I heard three simple words: love will come. It was very masculine. It was all around me. And when I heard it, it was the one thing I was saying I wanted. And I went right back in my body. I'm like, whoa, what just happened? I stood up, went back to bed, and the very next day, everything changed because I felt as if God threw that rope down the hole to climb up out of. And here I am going, I'm going to get what I really, really want. But during those next 3 months, I found that nothing had changed with him. But I knew I had heard that it was going to come. I just didn't know how, where, what. So I got the strength to leave him. And then I went on the journey. I started, things started making sense. I went to the bookstore and got Eckhart Tolle, Wayne Dyer, Esther Hicks. I mean, they were literally all in front of me. And I'm like, I'll take that, 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 that. I didn't even have time to read, but let me tell you, because being my mom, taking care of things, now I'm a single mom because I left him. And I'm like, okay, now how am I going to read all these? I laid them down and I was reading two at a time. I could not believe how fast I was reading these things, and everything was making sense because the truth makes sense. So I found myself on the spiritual journey of learning Reiki, which I call it the lily pad of stepping into something. So in that case, I started there. I stayed long enough until I jumped into learning essential oils and crystals. And and intuitive development, and then mediumship work where I can speak to the non-physical. And I spent 5 years on a psychic website. And then I just, all of the years of practice, just like riding a bike, you get better and better, roller skating, you get better and better. And I'm here where I am today based off of that full connection of what God told me in that bathroom.
That is absolutely an incredible journey. And I mean, what I love is that you got told that it will come, that you didn't know the how and the where and the when on that.
Yeah.
And so that was a mystery in a lot of ways, but you took a lot of action from the strength you got in that moment to make those choices to work into this field of study. And I think that it's a true testament to when you put all of your energy into one thing and learn how to master that and create that skill, create that new mindset, that it gives you the tools and the ability to rechange your life at that point.
That's right. And the love will come was actually loving me. Because when you're pouring so much into someone that you are discounting yourself, you are looking for validation from someone else to say, I'm worthy of love. Please feed me and fill me full of the things that I'm giving you unconditionally. And so I'd poured in so much that I emptied my own vessel. So the love will come with seeking and finding my own inner worthiness, my own inner love, expanding and feeling that connection that I can trust. And that's actually because I live with this full-blown heart chakra wide open and saying, I love everything. Now, I'm not, a hippie running around going, hey, love and peace and all of that. But I know I'm fully grateful for where I am, being here right now, talking to you, my cat, my water. I mean, it's nothing too small is not it's it's not small enough for me to be grateful for. I'm completely grateful for everything I have because where I am just simply catapults me every day to something, another great adventure. I look at life as every day is a great adventure.
I absolutely love that. What was it like as you started breaking away from that old mindset that you had and you were starting to adopt this new philosophy of life? What was that transition like for you?
Uh, you know, I love that question because for many of your listeners, they're going to have that same question for themselves when they're not really sure where to start and what that looks like. We all live intuitively, but we think that people will use, well, that's a coincidence. There are no coincidences. Or I just, decided. Well, you decided because of what you felt, or you just did it. That's living intuitively. We all do it, but we feel like we need to see it with our eyes, hear it with our ears, smell, taste. We're all conditioned that that's what we have to believe in through those senses when the sense really is living through your heart and trusting and knowing deep down as you're living intuitively, but you can shift from that. So when I was learning all of these things, I was saying to myself, okay, if I'm the one who is part of the experience of that, because truly we all create what it is that's happening around us, right? So I had to decide what in me was causing me to create that and keep me from the love that I really, truly wanted and desired. Well, once I realized that what my grandmother showed me, what my mother showed me, what I was told, what, everything in that space, I realized I was putting so much emphasis on him making me happy that if I'm not happy first, how can someone else make me happy? So I chiseled it away on certain things about love, about happiness, what I was doing, what I was expecting. Because instead of taking all of your energy and blaming someone else, something else, or other experiences, we have to stop long enough to analyze what was your childhood? What did that look like? What did they show you? What patterns are you recreating from your childhood that really are not yours, that aren't making your heart sing and you feel like your soul is fully connected? Many of us live in that space of what others were showing and telling us to do until we stop long enough and say, this isn't fulfilling for me. And why am I doing and talking like mom and acting like grandma and acting like grandpa? Why am I doing that? It's not making me happy. So once you realize that we're all on this planet, we are all someone. All of us are someone. And once we realize that, it's not about ego, it's truly about your own happiness in there. Because when you're happy, think about it, it just naturally blooms out. All your love, and everybody feels like, wow, you're so happy, and you're so this, and you're so that, because it just supersizes out to others. And then that's where they start being lifted. So they'll either shift up or shift out. In the case where my situation, I had to shift out. I actually had to catapult out in order for me to find my own love inside. So it was really a matter of slowing down, talking less, listening more, analyzing my childhood, what doesn't make me happy, step by step by step. Because think about it, Chris, if you're at the office, you have a mountain of work. You don't work more efficiently, you actually work slower and you get overwhelmed. So in the case where you're like, where do I start? Separate everything and say, okay, let me see what my childhood looks like. Let me review what I felt I struggled with. A lot of the I'm not good enough, I'm not heard, I'm not lovable. How did your mother position you in the family? How did your dad position you in the family? It's very interesting. My brother just started talking to me, hadn't talked to him in years, and he reached out and he's going through a divorce. So I said, I'm dedicating myself to help you through this because I wasn't there for myself. I couldn't handle it. It was too much for me. But for him, I said, I'm going to be there for you and I'll help you walk through things. And I keep telling him over and over again, Mom positioned you just like X, Y, and Z. And that's why you are still attracting and seeing the same type of partner over and over and over. Once I've said that, and once I showed it to him, it was like palm on forehead. He goes, "What? Now I see it." Because it's hard to see the forest through the trees. But once you have somebody that says, so if you have a family member, talk together about what does that look like? How are you positioned? Or if you're an only child, how did you see your mom treating you or your dad or even your grandparents? They're also a part of your caregiving when you may have seen them on the weekends or maybe for the summer, but they're a large part of your caregiving as well.
You bring up something I talk about in my coaching a lot, which is this idea of your conditioning with your belief systems and even convictions you may have. And a lot of people don't ask, where did I get this from? Or was it even mine to begin with? And I always challenge people sometimes to reflect on that because society conditions us to fit into boxes as we go through life. And we've all heard the mantra of, grow up, go to school, get a college degree, get a job, raise a family, have kids. We've been told these boxes of life to follow. And a lot of times in those boxes, we get conditioned with certain beliefs from our family, our moms, our dads, our grandparents, whoever it was that was around us. But we never fully stop and ask and say, is this a belief that's actually mine, or was it someone else's that I took on? And
Mm-hmm.
was this belief serving me at one point, but is it not serving me today? Well, it served me going forward for that matter. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people don't stop to think about that sometimes because it's very autopilot ingrained in us, and it takes a lot of effort to even get ourselves to ask that question in the first place, let alone, like you're saying, take action upon maybe creating a new belief or a new construct that is supportive of the lifestyle that we want.
Yes. And, as you did the introduction, you stated that as an intuitive energy healer. Now, what is that? I use my intuition, excuse me. It's the trusting in what I feel. So I can feel someone else's energy. And so when you have people that, I'm reflecting back and I had a great mom and dad and I don't understand, I can't figure it out. Well, that's where I step in. So I'm clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient, which allows me to see things, hear things, and the clairsentient is the knowing. So I'll share what's in your energy field. I'll say, okay, you have a strong mom block. This is how old you were. This is what happened. And yes, I can do it. And then I bring it to the present state and say, and because of that, this is why you're struggling. And so I just put people's pieces of the puzzle together in a very short period of time. I'm not a 10-year, talk therapy type person. And I support talk therapy because I actually have clients that are in talk therapy to come and see me. And then I can do it in a very short period of time of showing you, and then I can shift it from the subconscious so that you'll feel lighter. I hear that a lot. You'll feel like, oh, I have hope now. I understand the things that you're saying you want start spontaneously happening, from money to new partners to new jobs. And, even getting terminated from a job. Because I tell people, you got to be careful about what you're thinking and saying to yourself. Because if you're saying, I don't like this job, it's too much for me, I just want another job, well, you're already setting the intent that you want to get out. But most of the time, we want to get out on our terms. But when you're saying that, you're putting it out into the collective energy. So your boss is picking up energy. Your coworkers are picking up energy. It's the collective energy here. And that's why sometimes people can get terminated, downsized, or just plain out done. And so you have to be really careful about what you're saying when you're trying to create it, because you could be taking yourself out without even acknowledging it, meaning just thinking it and being angry at going to work instead of, I'm going to find something that I can least anchor onto until I find something else.
I love what you just said there because I've reflected back on my life experiences, and there were times that when you put so much energy into an outcome you don't really want, and like you use that example of a job, I've been there many times, and I've been fired from many jobs in my career, and there's many that I've quit. I do believe that we have that inherent ability to manifest those outcomes, and I do think that if you really don't want something to stay together for whatever reason, like a job, you'll find reasons to make it happen. You'll look for them. And I think the
Mm-hmm.
same thing happens when you want something to go right. I think when you focus so hard on making something happen and making something work, they will start pulling that stuff towards you and you'll actually start building that.
That's right. And just like I had explained to you about how I manifested being on those reality shows, it was thinking it, feeling it, and taking guided action. And that is a master manifester. So, have you ever asked anybody a question like, so, what kind of partner do you really like? Or what kind of job do you want? And then they answer, I don't know. So when they answer, I don't know, how are they going to attract what it is they are saying their end result is when they don't see the end result? So that's when, if you're to the point where you don't know, then here's, oh, I just got a flash. I love the flashes. So I was in the place years ago, years and years before my spiritual practice, of not knowing exactly what I wanted to do in my life as well. And so I was probably in my late teens, about 15, 16, and I started reading all of the Nancy Drew books.
Mm,
Yeah, okay.
I
And
love
I
those.
love, yes. And I loved to try to figure out who did it before the end of the book. I'd get halfway through and I'm like, all right, I'm going to figure this out. So in my 30s, I decided, and it was kind of late. It was like, I think I was either 29 or 30. I decided that, I always loved detective work and trying to figure things out. And I think I'm going to apply for the US Secret Service. And I did. I applied for the Secret Service. And because I knew I wanted it, and I had lived in the space when I was 16, figuring things out, I'll be really good. I wanted to be an agent so I could travel around the world you know, and how it all ended up being, the moment I thought about doing it And when I applied, they said, you're a little old because they like you to start in your early 20s. I was in my late, I was 29 going into 30. And I said, well, I can do it. And I remember that I shared it with a friend who shared it with another friend, and he was a DC police officer. And then he contacted someone and he says, okay, here's the address. You're going to go to this floor and you're going to knock on the door, and it's not going to be anything on the door, and they're going to slip you some papers. And literally, I felt like I was already like CIA kind of going in, knocked on this door, and they opened up this little hatch, drew this little piece of paper through, filled it all out. And then I ended up on the fast track. Then I went through all the testing, and every place that I went, you're going to laugh at this. This is so hysterical. But because I wanted it so much and I knew I could do it, that things just sort of went like poof, meaning, so when I went to apply, you have to take a special test. And no one sent me the email. Someone called me and said, show up at this address at this time. I said, I'll be there. Well, I didn't know that I was supposed to wear a black suit. I come up with my convertible down. I'm just driving. I have this little top on and these little leggings, and everyone is getting out. There must have been 100 men, because the Secret Service is mostly men. They were all wearing black suits, and I'm the only woman. And I'm looking around, and I'm like, I didn't get the memo because I'm underdressed. And I went in and I took the exam. Nobody blinked, not a single blink at me about what I was wearing. I went through and I passed that. And they're like, okay, you're going to get all your blood work and all your medical exam. It was again another secret building that I went into. They obviously didn't have any women because the guy was really nervous, because, you have to just stand there naked and they're going to put these things on you and test your lungs and test your blood and test everything. And it was so funny because he says, okay, you're going to get through now. You got to go through your eye exam. And that's where I got caught up. I couldn't get through. The left eye was too weak. And I'm telling you this story because think about it. Every place along the way, I never got the full instructions. I just got, here, go here, do that. And every time I was the complete opposite. But no one blinked twice because I was on the path of what I said I felt and wanted. That's how you manifest. Now, in the end, the eye, okay, I really wanted it. It didn't work out. I couldn't, they wanted 20/20 vision. I couldn't even get it corrected to 20/20. So, and it was the very last hurdle that I needed to jump. However, if I got through, I would still probably be in the Secret Service, but I didn't, and now here I am today. So in the end, when you're manifesting and you're creating, and what you really want can happen, but then again, there may be a purpose in your life that you may not necessarily know, but God knows. And then things might not be exactly as you want it. But if you trust and know and you're living through life, I'm fully grateful. I'm fully grateful for the experience. I remember everything. It was fun. It was exciting. And where I am today, I'm fully grateful because I may not have be here if that all worked out. So I just know that while we're moving through life, being fully grateful for everything, everything, including the situation with my partner, God talking to me, jumping through all the lily pads here and there, learning all the things, being here. So when you're living in that space, then your purpose is to expand and grow, and that's what you're doing. Everything else is a choice, right?
That is really powerful that you said that because I, for many years, said I want to be a coach, and I never really knew why way early on. But I had a gift to help people, and I really do. I've stumbled upon that passion after everything I've gone through. But if someone was to ask me 5 years ago if I was going to be in a grief space helping people navigate grief and loss, I would have looked at them crazy and been like, no, I'm a mindset. I help people with mindset and business and this and that. And now that I'm here in this grief space after all the things I've gone through, I'm very grateful, like you said. I'm very present. I know where my path is. I know where I'm supposed to be. I know what I'm supposed to do. And I know that it comes effortlessly, by the way. It's not pushed or forced. And that's something I wanted to build upon after what you said. You know, you didn't get asked a lot of questions about how you were dressed, where you were, those things like that. You were following that path. And that's where I think when you allow yourself to get rid of the roadblocks in front of you or the limitations and you just allow things to come towards you, there's not resistance you're fighting. It's actually going like it's like going down a river, river rafting. You're just riding
Mm.
the you're riding the current. Um, and I know a lot of people think that's
Yes.
crazy, but I'll be honest, when you are trying to fight something or push something or pull something in
Mm.
whatever
Or
way,
cheat.
or chase,
Uh-huh.
you're very out of your alignment. And that's kind of where you'll start running into issues, by the way. They'll get compounded constantly because you're just out of alignment of where you're supposed to be. And I do think that all of those, I have a quote that I found on Facebook a long time ago that I think is what God does. When God closes one door, he opens another. And so I always say if a door closes, just keep moving. Shift. It doesn't matter if you go left, right, up, or down. It doesn't matter. Just go. Because God will always close the doors that aren't meant for you, but He'll leave the one open that you're supposed to be in. And
That's
that one
right.
doesn't require force.
That's right. But also, while you're living life, there are moments like I explained about the father of my children that was very detrimental to my heart and the things that I wanted with him. I never wanted to be without him during that time, right? I thought we would be together forever. But it also gave me the ability to see where I was losing myself, of going into that relationship and expecting validation because I didn't get that from my dad. I didn't get it from my mom because she positioned me to be the caregiver for my brother and sister. So I didn't have a loving, validated state of being. It wasn't a healthy relationship. So now here I am as an adult looking for validation of love that allowed me to feel like someone is choosing me, but he never really chose me. So I had to decide, am I going to leave this planet in this moment of feeling like I never got that full, complete satisfaction of feeling like someone's choosing me? But it's not about that. You have to choose yourself first. So within that space, I learned to be a stronger person, understand that I don't need validation, that I am the validation to myself, and that I can feel the ebb and flow of a relationship without losing myself.
Well, I think that's something we're not taught very well growing up because society always tells us to put other people first and help people constantly and do this and do that. And in that struggle of things, we lose ourselves. I think that's really what happens. And if you were to ask somebody, you know, in most situations, you know, what do they typically focus on every day? You'll hear them say things like, "Well, I focus on my kids, I focus on my husband, I focus on my job, I focus over here." They'll tell
Mm-hmm.
you where they focus. Very rarely will you come across somebody that says, I focus on me first and I help other people after I've taken care of this.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's something I learned in my coaching practice too, that I try to encourage other people to do. It's if you want to help other people, you've got to clean up your own backyard in a lot of ways because you may carry problems or issues you have onto something else through trying to help other people. And it's even like the analogy of being in an airplane. You got to put your mask on first before you help
Mm-hmm.
other people. If you don't, there's a good chance you might die while you helped other people.
Yeah.
So it may not work out. I love that you speak a lot about seeking that validation within because as somebody that used to be a very big people pleaser and didn't know how to find that for many, many years, I can't tell you how much that means when you're actually able to find that within yourself. When you stop seeking it everywhere else outside the world and you just allow your external environment to be, it almost feels like you're in your own little world when that happens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you'll see I've learned a lot about like avoidant attachment styles, anxious attachment styles, fearful avoidant attachment styles, and what that looks like. Because I had to see some of the anxious attachment style in myself and then focus on healing me so that I know that who I'm attracting, that I'm not going to stranglehold and I got to have you. And no matter what he says, that I'm not going to allow my emotions to own me.
Uh, that's another powerful thing that I work on myself quite a bit, but I know I help other people in coaching with is not letting your emotions run you. I think that's a very hard lesson that we all go through, by the way. I don't think anybody's clear on that one. But I'll just say that our emotions, especially when we go through grief, and especially in your situation you described, where you literally were at a point where it was just, I don't want to be here anymore because I'm not getting my needs met in any way. And this is feeling very lonely, very dark. Um,
Mhm.
I think a lot of times I try to tell people emotions are messages. They're trying to communicate something to you. And society, again, which is what the stereotype I like to break, is emotions are not meant to be controlled. They're not meant to be suppressed. They're not meant to be put in a box or they're not meant to be shelved somewhere. They're trying to communicate with you some need you're trying to get met. They could also be something you
Mhm.
need to learn. It could also be a gift for you in that moment, by the way. It can always
Mhm.
come in the form of that. And I think that when you open yourself up fully, when you're feeling a very heavy emotion, to start asking it questions, saying, what's this emotion trying to tell me right now? What do I need to hear message wise? Or in this situation in particular, is this emotion telling me I'm safe or is it telling me I'm unsafe? Is it telling me
Mhm.
I need to say something or I need to redirect? I think that emotions are big powerhouses for us to guide our intuition fully and actually listen to ourselves on a soul level, is what I like to call it.
Yes. I say cellular level.
I
But yeah, no, I
love
totally
that.
I totally understand that. And hopefully that your listeners are getting, some of the understanding that, when they're being triggered, it's to stop long enough before you respond emotionally, because then you're spiraling. You're either gonna, you know, freeze or fight or whatever you end up doing, instead of stopping and saying, am I putting so much expectation in this individual to give me X, Y, and Z, when in fact it's within you that you have to have that, and so his response or action won't even affect you at all when you're whole and complete.
Well, that's something big, that I talk about a lot in my own life that I learned some very hard lessons on is expectations. And I do think that in many ways, expectations lead to disappointment. They always do. And I'm not perfect, by the way. I'm prefacing this for a reason because I always say that we all have expectations every day for how we see life or how we want someone to react or respond to us or what we're looking for out of a job or looking for out of a relationship. And sometimes those expectations do get in the way and we end up with an adverse effect of things from that expectation. And it takes a lot of practice, by the way, to be cognizant and aware in those moments to say, was there an expectation I placed on this situation in front of me that caused this outcome? And really digging deep in that place to say, to recognize that pattern. And then also, what you also said I wanted to build off of is I always use this phrase have to all the time because I hear people say, well, I had to react this way or I had to do this. And I say,
Uh,
but did you have to? Did you really have to? Like, did somebody, I use the phrase all the time. I said, did someone put a gun to your head and say you had to? And 99% of the time I hear no. And I say, great, then you didn't have to, you made the choice to. So, what I want to give you power for, because this isn't a punishment session with me, this is a recognition session. So, I want to give you the opportunity to recognize the choice you made. But now let's talk about the choice you really can make for yourself. Not that you have to, but can make that might give you a different outcome. And I love that I watch people go through this thing of like, oh my God, now I'm getting so, oh wait, he's giving me a choice. And that's the beautiful thing is creating that awareness for us to make better choices.
hmm So I want to dive just a tiny bit deeper into that, just a little bit, because then someone will say, but if I didn't feel like I wanted to expect the end result, then how am I going to get it? Because if you're telling me that I have to be excited and start thinking about it, there's a fine line between creation and lack. It's so fine, it's thinner than a hair, just a single
Mhm.
hair, it's thinner than that. So I've actually talked to people about, you want a job? How are you thinking about it? They're like, I want it. This is so perfect for me. Okay. Then what is it that you feel that you want and don't want? And usually when they say, well, I want it because I have this experience and it makes more money and it's closer to my house. Okay. And what is it that you don't want? Well, because, I have to leave this other job that I really like, or I love the people at this other job. And I don't know about this other one, the hidden unknowns, right? And I'm like, well, those hidden unknowns are also keeping you from being able to move into this new job, because it's like when you're selling a house. And if you've lived in the house for 30 years, but you're downsizing, it might be a 5 bedroom house, and now the kids are moved out and it's just you and your partner, and you're like, this is too much, big yard. And then the one partner is saying, oh, but we raised the kids here and these walls and it's so comforting, and moving to the other, are we sure we want to do this? Now there's doubt, there's pullback. And then it takes them 6 months to a year to sell the house, because it's the energy of attachment that's keeping you from being able to glide into your next great adventure. So if you're trying to
Mhm.
manifest that job, think it, feel it, take guided action. You have to think what it looks like. You have to feel that you're in it and trust without a doubt, and then take guided action into moving into it. But you have to trust without a doubt. I see so many people. I just had another client the other day. She's like, I applied for this job. I don't know. I don't know. I applied for this job. And I said, but you keep saying, I don't know. When you keep saying, I don't know, you're literally switching the magnet and pushing it away from her. And she didn't get the job.
I'm glad you brought that phrase up again. That's what I wanted to reply to a few minutes ago. The phrase I don't know, I always tell people is you're lying to yourself when you say I don't know. And I say that with passion because when you say the words I don't know, you do know, but
Yes,
you're
exactly.
suppressing yourself or you're lying to yourself, one of the two. And both of those things, by the way, mean you're not acknowledging or allowing yourself to truly feel authentically who you are. And that's where I try to get people to say, this isn't about anybody else right now other than yourself. So if you say, I don't know, my question always comes, what are you keeping down below that you don't want to say to yourself? Maybe it's something that's a very hard truth that you know, but you don't want to say. Or maybe it's a perspective that you think will get judged in some way by other people. And I love giving people that space to say, I'm not going to call you crazy. I'm not going to call you ridiculous. I'm not even having an opinion right now. But what is behind I don't know? And
Mhm.
I've caught people, by the way, when I push them a little bit, comes right out. And then I say, how did that feel to get that out of there? How did that feel to get that sentence out that you've been holding in there? And they say, that wasn't as bad as I thought. And actually, I feel better about that. And all of a sudden, the clarity from I don't know to I know what I want is right there.
Mhm.
And it happens
Mhm.
in a lightning flash of a moment.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give you a little tidbit if you don't already know this. So as your clients are talking to you and they're like, yeah, I got that job and it felt really great, but I don't really know if that's really, when they answer with, I don't know, while they're in it, that's doubt. That's right there in front of your face is doubt. And so when I hear that, when my clients respond with, I don't know, I instantly say, well, you're doubting already. Because just like you said, just as we all know, we do. But people will automatically respond, well, I don't know. And I'll say, but yes, you do. So that's the number one thing is I tell them to release and do not say that in their vocabulary at all. Always respond, I know, or just don't respond with, anything at all. Just go, okay, just don't have to. And when they say think, maybe, might, that's also doubt. So I think they'll respond, yeah, I think you're right. And I'm like, well, when will you know? Because right now we do know. So I
Yeah.
call them out right in the moment. Because actually, I had a client, I listened to her for 5 minutes talking. She did not have a single gap, but she must have said, I think, 100 times in that 5 minute conversation. And I
Wow.
said, honey, you have so much doubt in you. She goes, no, I don't. I said, do you understand? I lost track of how many times you said, I think. And I think is a form of doubt. You don't have to think about how you feel. You already know it. You don't have to think about that's what it looks like. You already know it. So eliminating those 3 words will help you to eliminate any form of doubt, because now you're grounded into your answers of saying, yes, I know it. Yes, I have it. Yes, I see that.
You know, that's something that I get a little criticism in my own life because I talk very concretely about things all the time. And I do that on purpose because what I've realized is, like you said, when I sit there and the I think or I don't know or maybe kind of sort of if um I'm always leaving myself the chance for anything and everything to happen. And I never truly land on a decision or a direction for that matter to move forward. And so I get asked all the time is I've had people say, well, you speak so concretely about things, like you're just like, it's gonna happen. I said, well, yeah. I said, that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, it doesn't work out. And I said, that's fine too. Because my whole thing is, by the way, I might have been going this way, but God closed the door, right? All he said was, this just isn't your path. That's okay. So I go this way and I get concrete, and maybe that door goes up, and I say, okay, well, we tried that. That didn't work. I always keep turning, and so I just see it as
Hmm.
re I redirection is re-guidance by God. That's what I've
Hmm.
come to learn on my path. And so don't be scared to be concrete in your thoughts and beliefs. Don't be scared of that. And don't worry about anybody else judging you, by the way, because your journey is your journey alone. I can't, I tell people in my coaching practice, I can't tell you how to grieve. I can't guide you down grief in a 12-step program. Can't do that because it's a personal journey and I respect that. I'll walk it with you, by the way, and try to help you along it, but I'm not going to tell you how because I want you to listen to your intuition and your guidance because that thing inside you will say, ooh, this doesn't feel right. Or it'll go, yes, this does feel good. Um, and it'll help you figure that out.
Yes. And you know
So,
what you were doing energetically is that when you're speaking with concrete feeling, you're setting an intent. So without stating it to yourself or reading affirmations or putting them on the refrigerator, you are actually saying, yes, I'm going to do this. Yes, this is how this is. Yes. And that's what you're manifesting, thinking, feeling, creating, right? And then as you're moving along, you're intuitively pivoting as things are shifting, and they're not all going to be just like the box you created. So if you say I want $1,000 in the bank, well, why not ask for 10,000? Why not ask for 100,000? Why not ask for 1 million? And then when people say, well, I'm asking for 1 million and I'm not getting it. And then I'll say, well, I have a $3,000 program. You want to buy it? Oh, that's too expensive. I'm like, well, then your value of $1 million in the bank is not going to get you anywhere because you're not in alignment with that $1 million. So I'm not just, I'm not throwing some sales out there, but I always ask something like that, is that,
mhm.
are you, because the word expensive is universal to people. Sometimes someone will say, well, that's expensive. It's $50,000. Another person will think it's expensive if it's at $500 because they're thinking it's their reality that's controlling them. And my bank account says X, Y, and Z. Because now you're using the eyes, the ears, the mouth as what you think your reality is what you can create. You set your intent, you're moving into it. It's more about trusting beyond what those other senses are telling you.
I love that you said that because I'm working on an anthology book project right now with 22 people across the world. And when I started this project, I got into that, fearful mindset for a minute and I said, God, 100,000 copies sell this book. I was like, that's a lot. And then I started sitting there going, but there's people that do this every day. There's people that write books every day. And then as I started sharing that was my goal with people, I started getting this look on the face of like, that's a lot. How are you planning to do that? That's kind of crazy. And I sat there and I said, everybody said Steve Jobs was crazy for making the iPhone. Everybody said he was crazy about it. And guess what? It's in all of our pockets today. All of us have an iPhone, right? I
Yeah.
said, Boeing, for example, everybody said we weren't going to fly in planes. Look what's happened in 75 years. We're flying planes every single day, 7 days a week, 365. My moral of the story, just like you said, is that I sat there and said, it is not crazy for me to want to
Mm-hmm.
sell 100,000 copies. It's not crazy for me to sell 1 million.
Mm-mm.
It's not crazy.
Yes.
I
No.
said, it can happen. The question is just how.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I
Like,
could tell you how, actually. So I actually went to a workshop, and I have his books down there. And part of the workshop, the ticket included 10 copies of his book. So he sold actually, through the ticket, which we paid for the books through the ticket, 10 copies of these books. Well, then I took the 10 copies home, and I actually, I think, have 3 left, but I handed them out, as I got home. But he sold 100,000 of his books, but it was through a workshop by selling them through the ticket at 10 copies each. And he did it, and it wasn't wrong because I've been giving them out. So it wasn't
I
wrong. It was
love
how he
that.
did it. Yes, it was how he did it. It was years ago. It was pre-COVID. But yeah, yeah, he did it that way. So think out of the box, my friend.
Well, that's what I think I'm coming to realize on my spiritual journey that I've been on, is I've realized that these things are not out of our reach for us in our life. They're really not. And there's a lot of people I see stuck in jobs that are very unhappy with their life, and they're very
Right.
unhappy outside the job. And I sit there and say, if you live your whole life that way, if you think about that for a hot second, there's a lot of people that will stay in a bad job they don't like for 20, 30, 40 years, and then they'll retire, right? But they've lived 40 years unhappy. Now they're at the end of life where they don't have the time or the energy or whatever it is to truly find happiness that they've wanted for so long. And so I started thinking about it in my head and I said, what if you could have all that right now? What if there's just a different way, a different path, a
Yes.
different journey? What if there's
Yes.
a different how, just like you just brought up?
Yes.
It's not crazy. It's just a matter of how do we do it? That's all.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I half my authors that are in my book, by the way, have published books before. One of them just got turned down from a publisher, and I laughed really quickly because she's said in her post, she said, "This publisher shot me down. That's fine. I'll go this direction. It'll be out next year." She was that quick to say, "This doesn't hold me back. This just means different direction."
Pivot.
And
That's right.
so I love Pivot. You reminded me of that Friends episode, Pivot. But that's
Yes.
but
You
that's
know, I
life, right?
Yes, I had a client and I loved how she said it. She said she would sit in a crowd or have friends around and she'd hear them say something. And then she would take that comment in her head and say, I'll have that. So if they were saying, "Oh, I want to write a book," she would say, "I'll have that." And she ended up creating a lot of things as she was opening up her energy to say, "I'll have that too. I'll take that. Yes, that's mine." Like almost that they're taking this offering, because think about it, when we're speaking, this offering of this podcast right here, people are taking these golden nuggets from us. This is an offering. So if there's anything, you can easily say, I'll have that. I'll take that. Yes, that's mine. And then create that.
I really love that. It's almost like ordering from the universe. I love that.
Yes. On the
But
menu.
but I mean, I can't describe how many times in the last year of my life I've done things similar to that. I've said, this is what I want. I'm determined to get it. And I will say that when you remove limitations, when you remove limiting beliefs, when you remove the I don't knows or I think or I kinda, shoulda, woulda, coulda,
Yeah.
get rid of that whole vocabulary and just say, I'm doing this regardless of X. All
Yes.
those things, I tell people sometimes when you get that concrete and you get that specific and that targeted on whatever it is you want, you almost scare off all those things.
Yeah.
They almost like run for the hillside. And then the only thing that is left, by the way, are the things that are going to help you on that journey. And they start coming in you very easily. And
Y-
so, yeah, it's a beautiful way to manifest.
Yes, yes, yes. But make sure that you're not saying that and second guessing, because then you'll have this tug of war of like, oh, I don't know if I should do it, but I said I'll have it. And then like, oh, it doesn't feel right, but I said I'm going to do it. And so again, it's the feeling. You see, I'm tapping on the heart. It's the feeling. You have to trust the feeling, even though you're saying, well, I created it, it's presenting, but something doesn't feel right. So what can happen is that your energy is saying, okay, just pause. Because we have three end results of a decision: a yes, a no, a maybe. But when we're children, our caregivers would say, that's yes or no. Take the cookie, yes or no. Why are you standing there? Yes or no. And they're like, and then we're thinking in our head, but we're not supposed to take the last cookie because we have brothers and sisters, or grandpa might want that cookie, but I want that cookie. Or if you take that cookie, why are you taking that last cookie? Your sister didn't get one, right? So now we're told that we have to struggle. We have to have a yes or no. There's no maybe. But I say, don't discount maybe. So maybe
Mm,
should last a few seconds, a few minutes, no longer than 2 days. After that, you become a procrastinator. But maybe
mm,
will give you enough insight to have the clarity to move to the yes or to the no. So don't discount your maybe, but don't become a procrastinator over it. Don't, because then if you're procrastinating, you have fear. What if it doesn't work out? What if no, no. You're wanting clarity. There was a perfect example. I just got that flash. There was a very well-known motivational speaker, and I went to this really large conference, and she had a private session, and she was trying to sell her program, which was teaching us how to be very storytelling through motivational speaking. And so she threw this contract down, and she's like, it's a $35,000 contract. I'm like, whoa, hold on. So I knew she was valuable, and I knew that her value was $35,000 worth. However, I didn't know what the program looked like because I, just like everyone else, has weaknesses and strengths in what motivates us and gets us to learn. So for me, it must be live. It must be a little bit more hands-on-ish. If there's a coach, I need the coach to be at least there once, twice, 3 times a month or something. I don't care about the other coaches, but I need the one who's teaching us, right? And that's me. If it's filled full of recorded um, sessions, I'm not motivated by that because if I have questions in the middle of it, then I have to wait and then the passion of my questions kind of gets skewed. So when she sent me a coach to talk, I said, okay, I have certain questions, talk, 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 and she didn't answer them. So then I said, well, let's have one
mm.
more meeting. So I get to the next week and we have another meeting, and I'm like, I'm going to ask you specific questions. And if we have to be on this phone for 4 hours, we're going to do it, but I need specific questions answered. Well, in the end, chiseling it down, the majority of the program were recorded sessions. So you have to listen to
Mm.
these recording. And I decided that did not give me the value that I knew specifically that would work for my strengths. I didn't want to have to work through a weakness through a $35,000 program, right? So I chose to opt out. So I didn't sign the contract then. I just said, I need more, I need more, I need more. So that maybe lasted just 2 sessions, even though she broke it down to 2 weeks. I needed to have more clarity to move to a yes or to a no before I could make the final decision. Once I got it, it was a no.
I love what you just said there because that's exactly how I like to think of decision making. And I think that's a big part of utilizing your intuition and understanding your needs before you even commit to something. And I think that sometimes we don't stop ourselves enough to say, I have questions, or I have a need not being met, or this doesn't feel right. What's causing me to not feel right now? And
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times we feel rushed to make decisions because oftentimes when we're in a high pressure sale environment like that, we get that push to just say yes and hit. And that's where I think we make mistakes a lot because we don't listen to our intuition. We're not listening to that guidance, like you said. Well, I'm fine doing that, but if it's a bunch of recording things, not really meeting my need. I can feel that inside, and it doesn't have to be. It's usually doesn't not up here. It's usually down in your gut, in your chest, as I like to say. It's usually this intuition feeling of something's off, something's not right, something doesn't feel right about this. It's that weird feeling you have, and that's usually your indicator of that maybe that you're talking about. And let that be for 2 days, like Terry said. Let that be for a couple days. Sit with it because it's probably going to tell you well, this kind of fits, but if I'm not getting these answers of things, and this is what I really need, when you can get to that place, now you can make a really clear yes or no.
Mm-hmm. But you just said sit with it, meaning though, you do have to dig in a little deeper in what your hesitation is. Like for me, I'm like, there wasn't enough clarity. Here's a contract to sign it, give me $35,000. I'm like, oh, but I need the program, I need the details. So let's say you want to buy something from a service provider and you're like, well, I don't know who they are. Then put it out on social media. Does anybody know anything about this? Just so you can feel that you're getting enough information to move into, you know, purchasing the services from this provider. if you're hesitating and it's a large ticket item. So make sure you are doing a little bit more to get the information to you to say, I can do it now.
I love that. And Terry, as we wrap up the podcast, I wanted to take a couple minutes for you to tell us about your book, The Secret Power of You. Um, Tell us
Oh,
a little bit about
yes.
what that book is and also where we can find it.
Yes, well, The Secret Power of You. You can find it on Amazon, and you can actually also find it on my website, which is terriechristine.com. But all the reviews on there have been people who have read it, have purchased it. Most were my clients when I first came out, and referrals. But I call it the tool for success. So meaning that you can utilize this just like you utilize your cell phone calendar, your alarm to wake up on your phone. The books are a tool for success. Once you start reading it, you'll get golden nuggets from it you can use in your own personal life to be able to shift and change. So, The Secret Power of You, found on Amazon, is a tool for success.
I love that. Well, I'm going to put a link to that, your website and the Amazon in the show notes when the episode comes out. So for you guys listening to this episode right now, go to the show notes because you guys will be able to find a link to Terry's book so you guys can check that out on Amazon. Terry, as we wrap up the podcast, I also ask my guests a couple questions. One of them is if you run into somebody going through grief or maybe feel stuck in grief, what is one thing you would share with them to help them navigate that journey just a little bit easier?
You're asking for one where I could give 10, but the one is breathe. You had to just
Mhm.
breathe through knowing that it may be a minute by minute to get through whatever it is that you're feeling that's tearing you apart. May it be all the way to your soul, but knowing and keep reminding yourself, I just got through the last 5 minutes. I can get through the next 10. I can get through the next day, month, and year. I know that I can get through this, and just breathe through every minute.
I love that advice. That's something I haven't heard yet on my podcast, but breathing is a very key element to the grief process and the healing process because, as I like to remind everybody, when you can focus and remember that you're alive, you were here, you were still breathing, your heart's still beating,
Yeah.
you were still present, you were still part of this journey, and you can remove yourself from all the distractions going on or the things that are making you feel nervous or anxious. You can bring yourself back to a grounded state through breathing. So I appreciate you sharing that. My other question for you is if listeners want to connect with you after listening to this episode, where can they find you?
No, thank you so much. Well, my website, as I stated, terriechristine.com. You can also find me on all of the platforms from Facebook. It's Terrie Christine 333. You can find me on Instagram, Terrie Christine. You can find me on TikTok, Terrie Christine. And then even if you Google my name, there's at least 10 pages of various platforms that I've been on. And then you can dive deep into seeing how I can help you in the deeper level of the mind, truly. So thank you, Chris, for having me. Thank you for saying yes. Thank you for allowing me to share my journey. And I hope that I was able to lift people out of some things that they're going through.
Well, Terry, it's been a true honor to have you on the podcast today. As always, you have a very, very beautiful story, and I know it started in a very rough time period of life for you, but it has transformed yourself into a lot of personal healing. I can tell you found a lot of love for yourself through that journey. And I love that you are out there in the world right now giving back to others with this incredible gift that you found along your journey. So I just want to say thank you so much for being a guest, not only on today's podcast, but for going out there in the world with your gift and giving back to other people who need that same light that you got. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing of work you're doing right now.
Thank you. That's so kind of you.
And I want to thank listeners for joining Terry and I on today's episode of the Empowered Grief Journey podcast. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with somebody you know who could benefit from Terry's story. For more episodes that are designed to empower you and support you during your grief journey, visit empowergriefjourney.com. You guys can subscribe to this podcast on Apple and Spotify. The Empower Grief Journey is all about honoring your journey, embracing your emotions, and finding strength in your own time. I want you to know you're never alone on this journey, and together we can navigate grief with courage and compassion. Until next time, be kind to yourself and take your grief journey one step at a time.